Let's take another breath. Our theme this month is joy. And my topic today is choosing joy over drama. Choosing joy over drama. One of the favorite lines in The Sacred Yes, which is the first volume of these downloads that I get in the form of letters. And the series is called Letters from the Infinite. And one of my favorite lines in The Sacred Yes is, drama is optional. It's optional. Now, it's not to say that there's something bad with drama, particularly as an artistic expression, because you can communicate a whole lot of stuff in a dramatic piece. But it is to say that if you use it consciously, deliberately, there's some things that you might be able to get out of it, but you don't need to create drama to learn. You don't have to do that. There's another letter in there where it talks about how we sometimes create things for ourselves to be able to overcome. That somehow or another we understand that there's strength in the overcoming. And I love when it ended the letter by saying, but don't create more drama than you're willing to forgive. Don't create more drama than you are willing to forgive. So last week we talked about joy, and we were talking about joy as a transcendent awareness. When something's transcendent, it's not just stuck and preoccupied in whatever it is that's going on. And last week we focused upon the non-attachment aspect of joy. That part of the way that we stay in joy is to not have too much expectation, particular expectation about how everything is supposed to happen. Because when it doesn't happen that way, then it feels like it robs our joy. And we were making the distinction between being happy and joyful. That when we are happy, we are pleased with the circumstances. The word hap really means English word circumstance. But you don't need the circumstances to be to your favor in order for you to be joyful. In fact, I think that's when you understand that joy, that peace that passes all human understanding, when you're able to find joy even in the midst of it all. Even in the midst. So too often we want to attribute the outer stuff as preventing us from having joy. So we think the way to get the joy is get rid of all the outer stuff, as opposed to the way to have the joy is to move up to a more transcendent awareness. And that even moving up to that non-attached transcendent awareness decreases the probability of whatever that is continuing. Listen to what I'm saying. Things multiply by our consciousness. It isn't whether we like it or don't like it, it's how much energy we give it, how much attention we give it. So we wind up fueling things that we don't even want because that's the focus of our attention. That's the focus of our attention. Pain pushes until vision pulls. Don't put all your attention on what you don't want to have. Put your attention on what you do want to have. I mean, it's as simple. I do this example sometimes. It's like if you don't want to engage the color blue anymore, don't keep talking about blue. I'm done with blue. I'm tired of blue. There's been too much blue in my life. I make a commitment right now, no blue. 20 times a day. No blue, no blue, no blue, no blue. You look like a blue. I can't have nothing to do with you. You look like a blue. Just blue, 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 blue. You join the, you know, we're not going to do blue anymore club. And guess what you're going to get more of? Blue. Because that's the constant focus of your attention. You have to put your attention where you want it to go. Well, what else besides blue? Maybe some green. Yellow. Ooh. Yeah, let's think about some yellow. Because the more you think about the other stuff, the less attention is going to go to what you don't want. It may sound overly simplistic, but if we know that, why do we act the way that we do? Why do we act the way that we do? So today's topic is about choosing joy over drama. Joy isn't something, no, let's put it this way. The joy is always there. Our experience of joy isn't something that necessarily just falls on us. We have this idea sometimes that just like gratitude, why should I be grateful until something happens that I'm thankful about? I'll have gratitude when something happens. Give me something to be grateful for, and then I'll be grateful. Give me something to be joyful about, then I'll be joyful. But it's the other way around. That joy is a state of awareness that you choose. Let that sink in. Joy has to be a choice. Love is a choice. Peace is a choice. Faith is a choice. Trust is a choice. It doesn't just happen upon you. Even in those moments where I'm just feeling all in love. But you're choosing that. You're choosing to be open. You are choosing to experience it. If you shut down and said, I don't like you, I don't want to be close to you, I don't want to be connected, you wouldn't be experiencing it. Same person could be there, trying to shower you with all the same love, but unless you choose to open to it, you will not experience it. Well, it's the same thing with the joy. Do you choose it? Drama sells. It's a shame, but drama sells. And we tend to give more attention to the drama than we do anything else. That's why there's so much of it. We want to blame the media. We want to blame the news. We want to blame these folks. But you know what? They wouldn't produce it if it didn't sell. I want you to just let that sink in for a moment. That if we weren't buying it, they wouldn't make it. But because we seem to have an insatiable appetite for it, more and more of it just keeps being produced. We don't have to listen to it. We don't have to engage in it, and we certainly don't have to perpetuate it. It is our choice to stay in joy. So I want you to pull out your affirmations. We went over them earlier. So the affirmations are something that we do at the beginning. And every week, every set of affirmations is exactly 100 words. exactly 100 words for reasons I won't go into at the moment. But a line got left off of this one. And since it wasn't on the screen, you wouldn't know that. So if you have a pen, I'm going to invite you to write it in. The person leading the affirmations told us to go on and say it. But it's perhaps the most important line and the inspiration for this sermon topic. The last line is, I always choose joy over drama. That's the last line of these affirmations. I always choose joy over drama. A choice is a decision. And it comes from the same root as an incision, to cut. So decisions cut things away. We tend to think of decisions as moving us towards something. That's true, but that decision also takes you away from other things. So once you make a decision to go over here, it cuts off over there. So when you choose joy over drama, that decision to choose joy then cuts off the other options. It then cuts off the other things, directions in which you might have gone. So every choice is a decision, and every decision is an incision. It's like the trim tab under the boat, that little piece that moves the rudder. Because you can't just turn around a big old ship liner, big old boat in the ocean. But what you can do is slowly but surely change its trajectory. So that little trim tab just puts a little block against the water. It just slowly but surely moves things. Every time you make a decision, and particularly every time you choose joy, that's a trim tab moment. Buckminster Fuller talked a lot about that idea of the trim tab. We need more trim tab moments. I'm going to share these affirmations so that they get in on the sermon part. And I want to share something about these affirmations in particular as compared to other affirmations that you may get in other places. These affirmations are very strategic. These affirmations help you get a transcendent view, and a transcendent view not simply from the perspective of transcendence from the perspective of not attachment, but transcendence from our time-space continuum. We get locked into our construct of a time-space continuum. What's up, what's down, what's in, what's out, past, present, future. So when we're trying to make that choice about joy, we're evaluating all of these things. How close in proximity is the thing that I desire? This time-space continuum, how far away is it? What happened in the past? And does what's happened in the past impact whether I can have joy now? What is my perception, my projection of the future about what's going to happen or not happen? And we allow all of that stuff to impact our joy. And what you will find in Inner Light's affirmations from week to week is they don't just do the I am this or I'm going to do that, like a standstill right here in this moment. There's some of that, but what you will find is that the affirmations address the past, what we call the present, as well as the future, and gets us into alignment in our thought of all of that. So we don't allow our attitude about what has been to eclipse our sense of possibility of what could be. We don't allow the inertia of the outer circumstances and things that are going on to prevent us from feeling like we have agency and can take action now. So these affirmations shift us around so that we're not stuck. Okay, pull them out and you'll see what I'm talking about. It says, I am careful about what I reinforce in my mind. Calm, affirmative thoughts quell my monkey mind. I'm careful about what I reinforce in my mind. That's a very present. I'm careful with this understanding that reinforcement is something that I'm going to do repetitively in the future. That I can have calm thoughts now that are going to quell the monkey mind. The monkey mind is your past thoughts. So my thoughts today can have an impact on the things that I was hanging on to before. Through the transformation of my mind, I am renewed. I release negative energy and refrain from fanning its flames. My life is filled with examples of being uplifted and supported. My life is filled with examples. Examples, that means it's already happened. So I'm not just affirming the possibility of being uplifted and supported. I'm acknowledging the fact that I've already been uplifted and supported. And as I go and look for those examples, it becomes more real to me. Everywhere I turn, there's evidence of goodness and past blessings. I bring to conscious remembrance the times that life exceeded my expectations. This is another way of like to count your blessings. Okay? That life exceeded my expectations. I remember the kindness not anticipated, the extra mile traveled to support me. I'm not just standing here whining or complaining or demanding about all the things that I want as though I've never had them. That's part of the problem with our miracles. That's part of the problem of our blessings. Because we lack gratitude. Because we don't keep them in constant remembrance. We forget. I think I shared up here several months ago, Wanda Sykes, who's an African-American comedian. And she said that the way that we learn in the U.S. and the way that we teach kids in the U.S., it's like it goes in one ear and it goes out another. I read a story, a survey a couple of years ago. Not a survey, but study, thank you, that's what I'm trying to say. A study where they tested high school students on what they did in their final exams in in May and June, and then tested them again at the beginning of September. They couldn't remember 60% of what they had just passed a few months ago. Because we don't learn, we cram. And you can't keep it. You can't hold on to it. She said we act like our brain is one big old Etch-a-Sketch. It's like it goes in there and we just shake it out before it can even stick. But think about that. This way we get stuck in the time-space continuums. When we don't remember the good stuff about the past. Where we act like everything is just what's going on in this present moment. And we can't remember the kindnesses. It says, I remember the kindness not anticipated, the extra mile traveled to support me. The kindness not anticipated, the extra mile traveled to support me. I proclaim my testimony in each test, triumphed while in the trials. This is part of the secret of life. This is part of the secret of life. You don't wait until it's over. In the middle of it, claim your victory. In the middle of it, know there's a testimony in the test. I grew up in the Pentecostal church, and there were certain nights of the week, that's what you had, testimonials. That was it. There wasn't anything else. Maybe some songs. But people would just pop up and testify. Testify what the Lord did for me. And you would just hear like miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle, like all these things that were happening, large and small, and you were witnessing it. Do you testify? Do you tell people? Do you remind yourself? What do we talk about? We talk about the lack, we talk about the limitation, we talk about all the stuff that's going wrong. We talk about all the things that we think we don't have, instead of taking stock of the things that we do have. I always choose joy over drama. I always choose it. There was a letter I got years ago, and actually remnants of this are in the Sacred Yes. And it said, imagine in life, whatever it is that's going on, nobody's over 5 years old. And see them in little knickers and play the whole thing out in the sandbox of life. It's amazing what perspective you get. I don't care how big of a world problem it is. Make everybody 5 years old or less in a sandbox. And watch the whole thing. I remember when I first got this, I was in the middle of some drama in my corporate job when I was working for Prudential. And there was this pushback that was coming from a lot of people at higher levels because I had gotten this early promotion. And unbeknownst to me, I guess earlier than anybody had ever gotten it. And I don't think it was so much the fact that it was an early promotion, but that I got it in the middle of that lawsuit that I was in, where my former partner and I sued this restaurant for not serving us in the quote-unquote romantic section of the restaurant. Our attorney was Gloria Allred. We won at a really big level eventually at the appellate level, and it got certified for publication, and it became a precedent case for the inclusion of sexual orientation into California's civil rights bill. It's this huge, huge win. There was lots of media and lots of media and lots of media and lots of media going on about this. So I was under the scope of corporate back in New Jersey, because this was a big national case. And when I first did this practice, I saw it, and I just started to laugh. And everybody was in this sandbox, and the top people were stomping around. It's not fair, it's not fair. She's got to wait her turn. She's got to wait her turn. The rest of us had to wait our turn. She shouldn't be able to butt in the line in front of everybody else. And it was like, oh. And it actually even gave me a little bit of compassion for what it must have felt like to look like somebody had butted in the line. Like unfair, when everybody else had to wait, kind of thing. You know? It's like, I don't know what you get out of it, but when I chose to not get stuck in the drama, is what I'm saying. When you choose a non-attached, transcendent view, something else is gonna happen. A couple of days ago, I recorded a show for Shift Network, one of my favorite online educational arenas. I do a fair amount for Shift. And this is a program called Thriving in the Third Act. It's specifically for women over 50. And I think this is my second year with Thriving in the Third Act. It's gonna air sometime mid-August, 2019. And we were having a conversation, and my, my topic was, even the crap is fertilizer. It's fertilizer. And I was talking about this time-space continuum and how we get stuck in it. And I was sharing a conversation that I had with the gentleman. It was our first time meeting. He had a very, very powerful, prominent position. And his wife had recently been diagnosed with advanced stage cancer. Lovely man, and he was hurt, and he was angry. And it was just the two of us by this time at this lunch. And he said to me, I get so tired of everybody telling me that everything happens for a reason. He says, it's just not true. I don't believe it. He says, some stuff just happens. It just happens. And I could tell how frustrated he was. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, and I appreciate, I said, I apologize for anybody. I said, especially spiritual leaders who, in saying that, might make you feel like you're being blamed for why it happened. I said, perhaps instead of saying that everything happens for a reason, we should say there's nothing that happens that doesn't have meaning. There's nothing that happens that doesn't have any meaning. And he just went, yes. And he immediately, he says, I gotta write that down. He says, I can live with that. I can live with that. And I began to really understand what that dilemma was and how it relates to our joy. That when we get into an over occupation, obsession with the idea of cause and effect, which even now we're finding out scientifically isn't exactly what we always thought that it was, that things are like sequential, that this thing caused that thing, not necessarily so. That when we say that everything happens for a reason, sometimes we spend all our time trying to figure out what that reason is. We spend our time trying to figure out why this thing happened. What is it in my life? What is it in experience? What is it that's made this thing happen? I can't get my peace, I can't get my joy until I resolve this riddle of from where did this come? And what I find is that it's a much more fruitful journey and a much more fruitful inquiry to ask the question more, what meaning can this have for my life? What meaning can this have for my life? Not just why did this thing happen, but what can happen now? Not just what made this thing happen, but what can I make of this now that it has happened? And that inquiry will actually lead you to the answers that you need to know about the why it happened. It actually will. Just rolling around and why did this happen, and why did this happen, and why did this happen? I've never seen it liberate us enough to figure out what can we do with this now. But if we stick with the what meaning can this have for me now? What significance can this have for me now? Even the deepest pain has lessons for us that are meaningful and beneficial for whatever it is that's next. And I find that if we do that, then the rest will start to come. One of the things that's most painful for us is the loss of a loved one. That's one of those things that cuts really deep in there sometimes, the grief and the sorrow. Okay? And that grief and that sorrow will open us up. The grief and the sorrow will soften our hearts. The grief and the sorrow will make the hardened husks come off, and we find ourselves sometimes more vulnerable, more willing to engage or to be supported. And we wind up making connections sometimes that we wouldn't have even been open and willing to make before that. There's something about it that softens. I'm reminded now of back particularly in the 80s and in the 90s. And I'm not saying that AIDS is not still a very big deal, but when it was first ravishing the gay community, the gay male community in the United States. And if any of you lived through that, I am not joking when I am saying that it was just constant. Even now, I will do like a little memorial kind of thing, remembrance. 25 names at a time is as much as I can do. I lose it. When I start getting about 20, I start to lose it. I mean, it was like that many people. And our families weren't supporting us, other people weren't around. But you know what it did? It did a couple of things. One, it healed the relationship between the men and the women. Anybody around then? It healed the relationship between the men and the women. Because I remember somebody saying, we're the only group that works together because we've decided not to be with each other. The gay men and the lesbians, I'm just saying. So it's like nobody knew. The blood banks were drawing up. And I remember those decisions. Like, we don't know how we catch this thing, but these guys are dying. And we know in the final analysis, no matter what we think about each other, that used to be my standard. When the wagons come around to cart us off, nobody's going to make that distinction. Whether you were male or female, we're all going. So you're not my enemy. It broke something. We became a united community. It provided the space for women to rise up in leadership. It was very similar to what happened in World War II, when the women went to the factories and the women had to start doing things. It made us heal with our families. People were estranged. And when you got really sick, the families had to get involved, and families that didn't know their friends and loved ones and whatnot. Got us back to the church. And I'm not saying that that was pretty, because the churches weren't wanting to bury us, or to be there, for us. Got us off the dime about health care and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it was in the midst of that where you could look in people's eyes, somebody 35 years old who's already been widowed 2 or 3 times. And it was a twinkle in their eye. When somebody goes into enough grief, something breaks open in them. When I look at the Dalai Lama, when I look at Desmond Tutu, Bishop Desmond Tutu, when I look at people who've suffered like really great things, there's a little twinkle in their eye. The ones who have figured out how to have joy in the midst of it. In fact, Bishop Tutu and the Dalai Lama actually have a book together called Joy that Doug Abrams here in town helped to create, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. But we had to choose it. See, if we stayed in the pity party of what all this was going on with us, we would have never made it. When Yasmina was dancing earlier and she was showing, she said, look, these are the moves, and the Ashanti tribe was dancing in the face of the British. I'm telling you now, as a black person and as a gay person, I don't know how we would have survived in joy had it not been for the dance. Had it not been for that choice time and time again to come back in community, to come back in love. There's always enough reason. There's always enough reason to justify why you shouldn't be joyful because you're not happy. But if you let happy get in the way of your joy, I don't know how much joy you'll ever experience. But if you choose not to get stuck in this time-space continuum of just what you see now, or all what you thought it had been, or all what you project into the future, and just go, no, there's some good stuff. There's legacy. There's ways that I've been supported. I can stand on this. I can build on this so that it becomes a new platform. And I'll leave you with this image. And I don't even remember the whole joke. But in this joke, somehow or another, a mule falls into the well. And he's too far down for anybody to get him up. So they really bemoan and they think, we're just going to have to bury this mule down here because there's no way to get him out. So they keep throwing dirt in there. And they keep throwing dirt. And more dirt, and more dirt. And eventually, the mule walks out. Because every time they threw some dirt on him, he just shook it off and then stepped on it. And he threw it off and he stepped on it. And just kept giving him a bigger and bigger platform that he could just walk on out of there. Shake it off, stomp on it, and walk on out of there. I'm just saying. Let's pray. Let's pray. We take the breath. We just pause to breathe. This extraordinary experience that's happening all the time. And yet, unless something's really, really wrong, we're not even thinking about it. If it was up to us to remember to breathe, we wouldn't have made it through this service. So I just say thank you. Thank you to whatever that is in the universe. As we discussed earlier, that the origins of dance was praising whatever that is that creates, whatever that is that organizes it. Whatever that is, it keeps everything in harmony and balance and healing and growth, rejuvenation and restoration. Call it by whatever name. I call it God. But it doesn't matter. A rose is still a rose. It's life itself. As we were just singing about this joy we have, the world didn't give it. And the world can't take it away. So in this moment right now, we open our time-blinded eyes and we choose to see. We choose to affirm. We choose gratitude. We choose compassion. We choose wholeness. We choose trust and truth. We choose to believe in the power of our own potentiality. We choose to see people as our brothers and our sisters, whether we like them or not. We choose to get over it. We choose to see a world in which everyone is thriving. And we choose to move in the direction of all of these visions. We choose to give a little bit more than we've given before. We choose to stretch that heart muscle to love a little more unconditionally. We go to deeper depths of forgiveness, of support, of openness, and compassion. We choose to care a little more, to give of what we have, to circulate. We choose to rest We choose to be still so that we can know the divine. All of this and so much more we choose. I give thanks in this moment for all needs met. I give thanks for healthy bodies restoring themselves for that vital chi energy moving at higher and higher vibrations. I give thanks for those financial needs being met in perhaps the most mysterious ways. Sustenance, food, shelter, divine right residence. We pray. Divine right transportation, divine right companionship and opportunity. We pray in this moment for justice, for our common humanity. That we act like and treat everybody as though they are divine spiritual beings. It doesn't matter where they were born or what country they live in. It doesn't matter their gender, their sex, or their age, or their economic status, or any of that stuff. Because we're all spiritual beings, deserving just because. You pray for this nation, and we awaken and use our strength and our power in the service of good. I pray for this spiritual community and all faith communities. And it doesn't have to be organized. The divine is right in our own bedroom. It's right there when we're sitting on a rock, looking at a lake or an ocean. Pray in this moment the fulfillment of the promise. Thank you, God, for our new residence. Perfect, whole, and complete. Divine order, divine right timing. Thank you. Thank you. We know that it is revealing itself now. It meets all the needs of our spiritual community. We give thanks for that. It's good. It's good. It's really, really good. And knowing that it's so, we just get out of the way. And we allow that which is in the mind of God to simply be. And so it is.